Hello again, biology pupils. Mr. Kinnear here with another video lesson for higher biology. We're on Unit 3, Sustainability and Interdependence. And today we're going to look at animal welfare, which is key area 3.4. So animal welfare clearly links into what we've been talking about already in terms of our food security, our growth, our breeding and our crop protection, because animal welfare is obviously linked to our agriculture and therefore the quality and quantity of food that we're producing through animals. So we're looking at the well-being of domesticated animals, particularly those involved in agriculture and our food chain. And traditionally the well-being has been looked at in terms of their physical health and their ability to grow, to reproduce and raise offspring, and to resist disease. However, that's quite simplistic and it doesn't cover all situations. So we're now looking at far more different ways of animal well-being and for them to be able to express their normal natural patterns. So these are now expressed in the 5 freedoms of animal welfare. None of these are particularly rocket science, but it does obviously go a bit further than the previous views of animal welfare. So they should have freedom from hunger and thirst. So animals should be able to drink fresh water when they need it. They should have freedom from discomfort, so their environment should be comfortable. Should be free from pain, injury and disease. So again, their environment should be safe and not cause them injury. They should be able to express their normal behaviour, so moving around freely and mix with other animals in the group. And again, freedom from fear and distress. So animals should not be exposed to unnecessary pain. And again, you may be familiar with a variety of different campaigns. Hugh Fearnley-Whittenstall was one of those people, Jamie Oliver as well, looking at intensive farming in terms of battery and caged chickens and other animals that have not been given these 5 freedoms. And again, that is something we need to look at in terms of the ethics of our food production. But why does it matter? Why do we have these discussions? It's because improved environmental conditions require a financial investment from the farmer. If you want more space to provide free range for your chickens, for your cows or your pigs, then it requires more land and therefore that is more expense. It is also more labour intensive, so it requires more hands to look after the animals and therefore that is another expense. So that's an issue. And equally, intensive farming, it does result in poor animal welfare, but it can be more cost effective and therefore more profitable for the farmer, but it obviously will produce cheaper produce. And that is something, again, that even in the UK, we still have people living below the food poverty line, and therefore cheap food products are something they will be looking for. So there is a downside and an upside to both of these particular models, and that's where the ethical discussions will continue to happen. So obviously free range has long-term benefits, so including increased growth of animals. So if you're looking to grow an animal for meat, then there will be more meat on that animal. Increased success rate of breeding, so therefore again more chances of getting more meat because you've got more animals. Higher quality end products. Now that could be a perceived reality or an actual reality, but obviously then it has an improved image and marketing appeal, and both of those will work towards a higher price point and therefore potentially more profitability within that. And the animals also have a better quality of life, and again that is something that a huge amount of farmers and a huge amount of consumers are interested in. So it's not a case where all farmers are just trying to produce the cheapest meat with the least amount of standards. There's a huge amount of people involved in farming and produce that are really concerned about looking after their animals and producing the best kind of quality of produce, as well as the best quality of life for the animals in their care. Farming in Scotland is incredibly well regulated, and there will be people employed by the government to inspect farms, whether that's at random or whether it's because of tip-offs of poor animal welfare. And clearly they will inspect the conditions that animals are in, but also they will be able to identify behavioural patterns that will differ from the normal, indicating poor animal welfare. Those include stereotypy, misdirected behaviour, failure in sexual behaviour, failure in parental behaviour, and the levels of activity. So we'll look into each of these on an individual basis to show you examples of them. The first example is stereotypy, and you may have seen video clips of animals showing this behavioural pattern. You can often see it when it's poor quality zoos or circuses, or you may actually see it in farm animals. The behaviour pattern takes the form of repetitive movement lacking in variation. So the common ones are pacing back and forward or rocking back and forward. And generally it's displayed when animals are housed in bare or confined conditions. Some people argue that that is the animal expressing its frustration, a natural response to an unnatural environment. But again, generally that stereotypy is reduced when the animal's environment is enriched with activities or different areas. Misdirected behaviour is similar, but it's when normal behaviours are directed at the wrong things. So here's an example of a bear chewing on the cage. So an animal acts inappropriately to itself, other animal or its surroundings. There's another example of a sun bear may mutilate itself when kept in isolation or confined spaces. And you can also see excessive licking, plucking or chewing its own feathers, hairs or limbs. It's an example there of a caged or battery chicken where it's been plucked either by itself or the other chickens around it. So normal pecking behaviour is expected in chickens. They'll peck at the ground to get food, but in battery and caged hens they will peck at each other, and you'll often see battery and caged hens without any feathers. Failures in sexual behaviour are as straightforward as it sounds. So stressed animals will fail to demonstrate mating behaviour such as seeking out mates or just going through the process of mating. And they may also be physiologically incapable of mating due to the stress levels. And that's something we might see in zoos, irrespective of the quality of the zoo. Animals kept in captivity and in unnatural conditions will not want to mate, and therefore zoos, some of which are involved in breeding programs, will struggle to maintain breeding with those animals due to the stresses that they're in. In captivity, we often remove males from the process, and therefore they are removed from parenting. Females may abandon their offspring or act aggressively towards them, even kill them. And some may steal the young of other females. And again, there's some pretty cute pictures there of obviously animals being reared either by hand or by other animals there, in the case of that lab looking after some white tigers. But that obviously then is due to the stresses and unnatural behaviours that the animal is expressing. And level of activity has two different extremes. You've got apathy, where the animal just is lying around, standing around in the same position for a huge amount of time. And the opposite, high levels of activity, hysteria. So lots of movement that could be alarmed or panicky. This is something you may see in dogs at home, just like this example where the dog trashes the room. If it gets bored, it's not getting the mental stimulation it requires, then it's going to act out with this hysteria. So you need to provide that mental stimulation for them so that they actually display their normal levels of behaviour. So obviously nowadays, whether it's zoos or whether it's farmers, looking after animals requires a lot of enrichment. So the basic things of allowing animals out into the freedom, so rather than being kept in small cages, allowing them to roam free, to go in and out of their dwellings as they see fit, giving them opportunities to display their normal behaviours. So examples there of big cats chasing things, whether it's a football or that example of a cardboard zebra, the meerkats chasing balls, hens with balls or with food in them or not, and allowing animals to express their behaviour through enrichment plans. And again, you'll have seen examples of that if you've watched any programmes about zoos. I've seen carcasses of animals being put up trees for tigers so they can do their normal behaviours. So there's a variety of different ways that farmers and zookeepers can enrich the lives of their animals and therefore stop those behavioural patterns changing. So that's us for this week's lesson. Today we've looked at animal welfare, which is governed by the 5 freedoms. You can improve environmental conditions, but it does require an investment. And equally, that has a long-term benefit. And the behavioural patterns of captive animals can be monitored for signs of poor welfare, and that is something that the government and the farming industry take quite seriously to make sure it's regulated and we're looking after the animals within our care and that are going into our food chain. So that's us for today. Hopefully you found that interesting and informative. As always, if you have any problems, give me a shout and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.